A relative you see twice a year is coming across the room at you with their arms already open. You do not stop to think about it. You lean in. You both pick the same side. One of you corrects, and neither of you mentions it. Nobody ever sat you down and taught you those rules. You simply have them. Close to half of all the human cultures ever surveyed do not have them at all. Not because they had never seen it done. Some of them watched it happen and understood exactly what it meant. They wanted nothing to do with it. So where did yours come from? To find the origin of the kiss, you do not start with humans. You start with apes cleaning each other. In 2024, an evolutionary psychologist named Adriano Lameira at the University of Warwick laid out an idea he calls the groomer's final kiss. Watch great apes groom, and the session tends to end the same way. The groomer purses its lips, presses them to the other animal's skin or fur, and gives a small suck to pull off the last bit of dirt or the last parasite. Lips out, slight suction, mouth to body. That final motion, Lameira argues, is the kiss. Not a metaphor for it, the source of it. Grooming was how apes built and repaired their most important relationships, and it ended, over and over, in something that looked exactly like a kiss. Other origins have been proposed, from sniffing to feeding behavior between a mother and her child. Lameira's case is that grooming is the only one that matches the kiss in form, in context, and in function. So kissing is not something humans invented. It is something we inherited and mostly forgot the reason for. As our ancestors lost their fur, the long grooming sessions had nothing left to clean. But the final gesture stayed because it still did the other job. It said, "I am close to you, and I am not a threat." That is the reversal. A kiss is not an instinct written into you at birth. It is a fossil of a behavior, kept alive because it was useful, and dropped entirely by the cultures that did not need it. And plenty of cultures did not. Start with how far from universal it is. In 2015, a team of anthropologists led by William Jankowiak went through 168 cultures around the world, looking for the romantic, mouth-to-mouth kiss. They found it in fewer than half, 46%. Across much of the record, there was no sign of it, and some cultures were disgusted by the idea. When the Tsonga people of southern Africa first saw Europeans kissing, the reaction an ethnographer wrote down was revulsion. They said the foreigners were eating each other's saliva and dirt. If kissing were a hardwired human instinct, it would appear everywhere, the way smiling does. It does not. Which means it is not wired in. It is handed down, culture to culture, the way a recipe is. Yours happens to be a culture that kept it. The behavior is not unique to humans. Our closest living relatives still do it. Primatologists have watched bonobos, the apes that share almost 99% of our DNA, kiss mouth to mouth, tongue included, as part of their social and sexual lives. Chimpanzees kiss too, but theirs is the platonic version, a way of making up after a fight or calming a nervous member of the group. Two apes, two kinds of kiss, and neither of them learned it from us. That is exactly what you would expect if the gesture is older than all three species. The chimps did not copy a human habit. All of us kept the same inheritance from an ancestor none of us ever met. This is where it ties back to older ground. A behavior like kissing leaves nothing behind. No bone, no tool, no shoe in a bog. But it can leave a microbe. At El Cidrón in Spain, the same cave that gave us the self-medicating Neanderthal, a team led by Laura Weyrich, sequenced the hardened plaque on teeth about 50,000 years old. Inside it was a microorganism called Methanobrevibacter oralis, the same one living in your mouth right now. The Neanderthal version and the human version had split apart surprisingly late, more than 100,000 years ago, long after the two species themselves had divided. Something had carried that microbe between them. There are only a few ways to move a microbe from one mouth to another: sharing food, feeding a child, or kissing. Weyrich raised the kiss, the headlines ran with it, and other researchers pushed back that food sharing does the job just as well. So here is the honest version. Neanderthals and humans were close enough, deep in the last ice age, to swap what lives in a mouth. Kissing is one way that happens. We cannot prove it was the way. But it is on the list. For the first kiss we can actually read, you have to come almost all the way forward to writing itself. For years, the earliest record was assumed to sit in India, in Sanskrit texts from around 1500 BC. Then, in 2023, two researchers, Troels Pank Arbol and Sophie Lund Rasmussen, went back through Mesopotamian clay tablets and found kissing described 1,000 years earlier, by 2500 BC, in what is now Iraq and Syria. The oldest sits in a Sumerian myth about the gods, on a tablet called the Barton Cylinder. And the tablets are matter-of-fact about it. They describe two kinds of kiss: a respectful one for family and elders, and a plainly erotic one for lovers, and they record the rules around it. Romantic kissing was for married couples. Do it with the wrong person, and it was a scandal. Those rules only exist because the thing was already ordinary. Which is the real point Arbol and Rasmussen made. Nobody invented kissing in Mesopotamia. By the time anyone wrote it down, it had been part of life so long it needed regulating. By the time of Rome, kissing had a whole vocabulary. Latin split it into three: the osculum, a kiss on the cheek for friends; the basium, a kiss on the lips, affectionate but not sexual; and the savium, the deep romantic kiss, the one you are picturing. A single culture needing three separate words for it tells you how completely a leftover ape gesture had been absorbed into human life. Romans kissed to greet, to seal deals, to mark rank, to show love. The grooming it came from was millions of years behind them. The motion had not changed at all. Step back and look at what kissing actually is. It is one of the most intimate things you do, and it is a recycled hygiene move from an animal that was not yet human, kept alive for tens of thousands of years for a completely different reason than the one it started with. It survived the loss of our fur. It survived the invention of language, of cities, of writing. It picked up names, rules, taboos, and poems. And it did all of that while nearly half the human species quietly declined to bother with it and got along fine. That is the part to hold on to. The behaviors that feel the most natural, the most like pure instinct, are often the ones with the longest and strangest histories behind them. You did not inherit a clean signal from nature. You inherited an old ape habit that your particular culture decided to keep. So the next time you kiss someone, notice what you are actually doing. You lean in, protrude your lips, and apply a small amount of suction to another person's skin. That is the whole motion. It is the last 2 seconds of a grooming session, the part where an ape pulls the last parasite off a friend and, in the same gesture, says the oldest thing one animal can say to another: I am close. You are safe with me. There is nothing left to clean. We kept the ending because we liked what it meant. It was never an instinct. It was a keepsake. Every study and every site behind this video is linked in the description.